the author of Performance Paleo Cookbook, was just released this past January.
Woo!
And also the blog keeper of Stupid Easy Paleo, making life simple for all of us. And then Mel right here is the author of the cookbooks Well Fed and Well Fed 2. And she is also a blogger of the Clothes Make the Girl blog. So without further ado, we're going to learn 20 ways to make paleo easy and more fun.
How's everybody doing? Enjoying the show? This seems really loud. Okay. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction to myself. I'm Steph Gaudreau, the owner of StupidEasyPaleo.com and the author of the Performance Paleo Cookbook, which you can see up there, and also the Paleo Athlete. So I am a weightlifter, and I love to take pictures of food. And my blog and my books are kind of a way to match all that up. So I'm going to be talking with Mel today about just practical tips that you can take home with you to make this lifestyle easy and approachable.
Okay, and this is me. You guys get a sneak peek. I'm launching my new website in like a month or two, and I'm going to retire The Clothes Make the Girl, and it's going to be melissajoulwan.com, and that's the new logo. Yay! My blog is called The Clothes Make the Girl because I started writing to amuse myself and thought I wanted to write about clothing. I don't know. And then I started sharing recipes, and here we all are. So that's my story. The stuff I'm going to be sharing with you today are things that I picked up along the way. I've been eating this way since late 2008, early 2009, so it's a really long time. I made a lot of mistakes. I got really frustrated sometimes, so hopefully the things that I learned will make it a little bit easier for you if you're just starting out. And those two bottom photos kind of represent to me what's most important besides my husband in my life. I really love to travel. That's a photo of me in Iceland. And I really love to work out. That's a picture of me doing a box jump. So I feel like the reason I eat paleo and try to follow this lifestyle is that the rest of my life is really awesome. So even though I love to cook, I don't really build my life around the food. The food is to support the rest of the things I want to do. So my tips are kind of hopefully help you guys do the same thing. And just for logistics, I'm going to cover some points, and then I'm going to hand off to Steph, and then we're going to switch back one more time. We thought about alternating slides, and then we thought it would be like you guys watching a tennis match. Just like So I'm going to start. My first tip is kind of a weird thing for a cookbook author to tell you, but I really believe when you're starting out, if you're not familiar with working in the kitchen, keep it really simple and save the recipes for later. You don't need a recipe to make really good food. If you concentrate on simple ingredients and really high quality protein, vegetables and fruits that you already like don't challenge yourself right out of the gate to eat vegetables you don't like. Eat the stuff you like, it's okay. And really good fats. Fats are where the fun comes in. You know, pasta and rice used to be the fun. Now fat is the fun. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. I had a friend, Erin, who, that's her real name, so let's keep it on the down low. She really wanted to go paleo. She found 21 recipes for her first week. She bought all of the ingredients to make 21 different recipes. She went to the grocery store, bought everything. She came home, put it all away, curled up in the fetal position, and never made any of those recipes. She freaked herself out. So in the beginning, really, keep it simple. A beautiful steak, a baked sweet potato, your favorite vegetable with some grass-fed ghee on it, perfect. If you're familiar with the hot plates and Well Fed, you also know you can mix and match proteins and vegetables, and we'll hit that again later too. Speaking of vegetables, you're going to need a lot of vegetables. You need about 2 cups of vegetables per person per meal. So 2 cups is about 2 fist sizes of vegetables. And before you get overwhelmed at the idea of eating a pile of kale that's like the size of your head, you can mix and match, right? So you can have a raw carrot or carrots and celery and some kale, or a really nice tossed salad and some butternut squash. You don't have to eat a giant serving of one thing, although if you want to eat 2 cups of kale, go for it. The biggest thing that might be different for you is getting your vegetables in at breakfast. I really recommend that you do this so that it's easier to get all the vegetables you need throughout the day. Again, you might want to ease into it. But a veggie omelet is not an unusual thing. So if you just kind of reframe your thinking and think about breakfast as maybe a little bit more savory than usual, or think about having a veggie soup, it's really easy to get those vegetables in at breakfast. Oops. Okay, having talked about vegetables, you're also going to need a fair amount of protein. And really, when I think about building my plate or building a meal, I start with the protein. Because protein is the building block for your body, you want to think about that as the initial building block for your meal. Based on your size and your activity level, you probably want somewhere between 3 and 6 ounces of protein in a meal. My husband is 6'5". He eats like half a pound at a meal. I'm kind of smallish, so I eat 3 to 5, depending on how much I'm working out at that time. For some people, the idea of eating a piece of meat is really overwhelming. If you're a former vegetarian, I know that's probably really scary. So my trick for when I'm just kind of over it is to, again, mix and match. Half a can of tuna and a couple of hard-boiled eggs does not feel the same as a giant pile of tuna salad. It's a lot more appetizing if you kind of break it up. When we went to Croatia a couple years ago, one of the things we ate a lot of was a mixed grill. And it's this platter with like grilled chicken and sausages and meatballs. So if you do some kind of weekly cook-up and cook all of those things in advance, you can throw together a mixed grill plate in no time at all. The other thing I want to make sure to point out to you guys is that when you're eating at home, unless you're a like rabid Instagrammer, no one can see what you're doing. So if you want to eat half a can of tuna and a hard-boiled egg and an Applegate Farms hot dog and a banana and a spoonful of almond butter for your dinner, go for it. Unless you take a picture of it or blog about it, nobody's going to know. Okay, so I think a lot of my tips are going to kind of focus on removing the stress around all of this and just kind of doing what feels good to you. One thing I want to cover really quickly is grass-fed versus conventionally grown protein. Ideally, in a perfect world, we would all be able to eat grass-fed, pastured, organic protein. If for whatever reason you can't get it, you can't afford it all the time, reduce your stress, buy the lowest fat cut of meat that you can, cook it, and then remove the excess fat by patting it. The fat is where the impurities lie. So in grass-fed meat, we want that fat because it's really, really good for us. In conventionally grown, it's not so good, but that doesn't mean you can't eat that meat. You just have to treat it a little bit differently. No stress, because stress will kill you faster. There's a happy thought. Okay, this is one of my favorite things when I started eating paleo, was actually being able to get friendly with fat and enjoy fat and not feel guilty about eating fat, and to realize that it's not only good for me, it's really essential. I was once shopping for a non-stick skillet because I always use non-stick stuff, and I ate a lot of like sauteed chicken breasts and steamed broccoli. This is what I ate. Lemon juice on the broccoli, no fat. There will be no fat on my food 15 years ago. So I went to the store and I said to the sales lady, I need a non-stick skillet that's like really super duper non-stick, like really non-stick. And she was like, yeah, this is non-stick. I said, no, you don't understand. I need to be able to take a skinless, boneless chicken breast, heat this pan with nothing in it, and put the chicken in it and cook it plain. So will this pan do that? And she looked at me like I was completely out of my mind. And now I understand why. Because fat really does two things. There's a functional thing that it does and a flavorful thing that it does. Functionally, the fat helps cook your food. It gets really, really hot. It caramelizes the outside, which gives it a lot of flavor. And by searing the outside, we keep some of the moisture on the inside so things stay tender. So functionally, for food and cooking, it's really important. For flavor, oh my gosh, fat is what gives your food flavor. And it's delicious. So there's really easy ways, even if you're cooking with lean meat, to add a little bit of fat to it. I really like to make a stir fry and drizzle a little bit of oil on the top. It only takes about half a teaspoon. And then if you also add a little bit of acid, like some citrus or a little bit of vinegar, you get a lot of flavor explosion without adding a really exorbitant amount of fat, but enough fat that it tastes really good and you're getting the fat that you need in your diet. Okay, we talked about keeping things really, really simple, But after a while, this is going to get pretty boring. You can't only eat steak and sweet potatoes. So I do recommend at some point upgrading to recipes, and we, of course, are biased about our cookbooks. But I think it's really important to pay attention to the source of your recipes and to know what kind of paleo you want to be eating for your health and your goals. So if you need to follow the autoimmune protocol, rather than following somebody who just does general paleo recipes like I do, there are great autoimmune paleo chefs out there. That's a really good place to start. If you're interested in the Whole30, Steph and I both have a lot of Whole30 recipes. So if you're primal, Mark Sisson's a great choice. So really be careful about who you follow. There are tons of recipes on the internet now. I would say a good starting point is anybody who did a cooking demonstration here, because they've been vetted by the community and they're good cooks, and they have a lot of respect for the paleo guidelines. And even when you start cooking with recipes, I do recommend KISS. She calls it keep it simple stupid because she's mean.
Keep it super simple.
Oh, super simple.
Keep it super simple.
I like to say keep it simple, sweetheart. But again, when I do a cook-up, it's a mix of recipes and then simple ingredients that I just kind of throw together at the last minute, so that every meal is delicious, but every meal is not necessarily ready for a Michelin restaurant. And finally, the cook-up that I keep alluding to. Just quick show of hands. How many people here usually do a weekly cook-up? Ooh, that's pretty good. That's like more than half. I realized pretty early on that I really don't like making dinner, which is not to say I don't like cooking. For me, there's a big difference between the two. To me, cooking is like putting on the music and relaxing and being creative and chopping and singing along and dancing in the kitchen and all of that fun stuff. Making dinner is like, oh my God, if I don't eat in 20 minutes, I'm going to murder somebody. So for me, doing the weekly cook-up separates those two things. I plan out what I want to cook. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to make food for the week. And I make all of the raw materials and or recipes that I need for that week. And then when it's time to eat, I just reheat the stuff. Now for some people that doesn't work. Maybe they don't have the time to invest in a cook-up, or they don't like eating leftovers. But for me, when I eat leftovers, I kind of feel like somebody else cooked for me, and now I get to enjoy it. So maybe that trick will work for you. The other thing is that in restaurants, they don't cook everything to order the second that you order it. They do prep in the days leading up to your restaurant meal and during that day when you go. So you're just kind of mimicking the way restaurants work. Something slow cooked to be cooked a few days before you want to eat it. Sauces last for weeks. And then things like a grilled meat or a tender vegetable like zucchini, you probably want to cook just before you eat it. So if you kind of think about running your own restaurant, that kind of makes the weekly cook-up feel a little bit more fun, maybe. And then it also feels like someone else cooked for you when you're starving and you want to eat dinner. Now I'm going to hand off to my lovely colleague, Stephanie. Oh, thank you.
So I kind of rushed through my introduction, but Mel already kind of alluded to the fact that I'm really interested in helping you keep food stupid easy. Now that doesn't mean it's not going to taste good or that you're not going to have to put a little bit of effort into it, but I think a lot of times we tend to overcomplicate things. And I have to say, like, fangirl moment to Mel, Well Fed, it was one of the first paleo cookbooks I ever owned, and yeah, it's amazing. Like, super creative, really tasty flavors, but you don't need a bunch of really special ingredients and have to have an Amazon Prime account to enjoy the food that's in there. So she's not only become a great colleague, but she's also become a really great friend, and I feel like we really resonate well, and what we're trying to do is very similar. So in the interest of keeping your life stupid easy, start with a pattern. And what I like to tell people to do is to pick 3 favorite breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, and then rinse and repeat. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can tweak those. So maybe you like to have a frittata on hand. Maybe you wanted to do like a breakfast stuffed pepper, and then maybe some kind of hash. So you could pick that as your breakfast template, and then mix and match the ingredients and the flavors, use some different spices. But that way, you build up your familiarity with this like arsenal of cool meals that you can always go to, and you don't have to sit down and pull out a cookbook like Mel was saying earlier. It becomes second nature. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges to starting to eat healthier is, not having to reinvent the wheel and not having to go pull out a cookbook and feel overwhelmed and like you have to learn new techniques. So rely on what you know, mix and match, and keep those flavors awesome. So for lunches, maybe you're going to include some salads in your rotation, choose some different dressings, mix up the protein, try a new vegetable. Maybe you're going to do a soup, so you can change that up. And then dinners, the possibilities are endless. Meatballs, for example. Like, always include a meatball in your weekly rotation, or some kind of slow-cooked meat. So that way you can start building in repetition and get familiar. And once you do get familiar, it becomes like second nature, right? You build that habit in there, and then over time, you don't have to think anymore, right? You're just able to go into your fridge and you see the chaos, right? You're like, what am I gonna make? But you're able to okay, I'm gonna pull out this protein, I'm gonna pull out these veggies, I know I have a sauce that I stashed in there, and all of a sudden you have this amazing meal right at your fingertips. So it's okay to repeat things. Yeah, we want you to have variety in your food and get a wide range of macronutrients and mix up your proteins and your veggies and stuff, but it's okay to be a little bit repetitive until you really get the hang of things. And with that in mind, start learning how to roll your food forward, because you don't need to cook and eat every meal fresh. And I learned this term from my friend Ciara Hanna. She's here in the audience. She wrote the Frugal Paleo cookbook, and she's my book tour wife. So we go on book tour together, and it's really nice to have a partner and a friend. But I really learned this from her in terms of the terminology, and it's super smart. So think about ways that you can take a food item, like say a whole chicken, and use that chicken in multiple different ways throughout the week. So you might say, for example, you can actually do this. This was mind-blowing to me. Put a whole entire chicken in a crock pot and just cook it for 5 hours on low, and it comes out, the meat's tender. Okay, it's not gonna have a crispy skin. You'd have to do that separate. But you can then take that meat, you could put it in some breakfast egg muffins, you could use it on top of a salad mixed with maybe some kind of green salsa, and then take those chicken bones and you put it in the slow cooker again or on the stovetop and you make soup. So think about ways that you can stretch what you have and roll that forward. So proteins are really amazing for this. You can take that food and then think about creative ways to use it, like breakfast hash. Anybody here ever do breakfast hash? Yeah, same thing, right? Take your roasted veggies that you had from earlier in the week, and it's all about repurposing, give it a little bit of new flavor, and presto, you have another meal. So I know leftovers to some people can be a little weird. And in our household, my husband has a histamine intolerance, so if you're familiar with that, it's hard to eat leftovers, but we've even figured out ways to work around that. So embrace the leftover, love the freedom and the time that it gives you back, and go with that. And on that note, again, freezer meals, better than takeout. So I know when you're starting to eat healthier, it can be hard to come up with meals when you're feeling the crunch of time. Now, I know there's that old saying, like we all have the same 24 hours in a day, but you need to give yourself a backup plan, a plan B. And if you can start filling your freezer with meals that are already prepared, it is like somebody just gave you a new leash on life when you get super crazy busy and you're not reaching for pizza takeout. And I think that's one of the things that we all know is key to sustaining this healthy lifestyle is like, how can I build in good habits and not fall apart when things get stressful? So just as a kind of a little disclaimer, not everything freezes well. And I'll get a little science teacher on you here because I used to be one. When you freeze things, you create ice crystals. And in a lot of things, especially fruits and vegetables, those ice crystals pierce the cells of whatever food that is, and when you then defrost it, it makes it soggy. And certain foods don't do really well in the freezer for that reason. But there are some foods that are like almost foolproof. So if you're going to make a big batch of stew in the beginning of the week, and you're like, I can't eat stew again. I've had it breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I am going to go out of my mind if I need to eat stew again. Take those leftovers and freeze them. Stews do really well. Any kind of soup. Egg muffins do really well. They might get a little flat, so they're not going to kind of maintain their airiness, but they work. Any kind of slow-cooked meat. So really start to look for ways that you can actually build yourself a bank of food in your freezer. Now, you might have to invest in some good storage containers. You know, there's nothing worse than pulling a bag out and your chicken is all full of ice crystals and freezer burn. But you can get vacuum sealers that are relatively inexpensive or invest in good storageware. And it's like somebody's given you a new leash on life. If you know a new parent, and you can give them some freezer meals, you're probably going to be their best friend forever and ever. So this is another kind of good way that you can help other people out and give them some freezer meals and bank that stuff. This is probably one of my favorite things. Keep your pantry stocked. You should be able to go into your fridge, right? Look through the chaos, find your meat, your veggies, find a sauce, but also pick components from your pantry to put together a meal and not have to run to the store. I'm lucky. I live 1 block from a Sprouts. They think I'm crazy. I'm in there all the time. And I'm like, it's okay. I'm writing a cookbook. Really. I'm not nuts. But if you have those pantry items on hand, your coconut milk, if you have to do a store-bought chicken broth, for example, any kind of tomato paste, right? Coconut aminos, fish sauce, keep that stuff on hand. Have it in your pantry, and then you can just reach in and pull out those dry ingredients that really make a meal. And in a lot of cases, these are the things that are going to make flavor. And like Mel was saying earlier, you can have your chicken breast and your broccoli, but if the food doesn't taste good and it's not enticing to you, it becomes a chore. And then you're like, actually, pizza sounds really great. So keep that stuff on hand. Always work on replenishing your supply. I keep a little list in my phone. I mean, you don't even have to write on paper anymore, right? So keep your list on hand and like always get that stuff. There are so many vendors here that have online like pantry type stores. You can find stuff on Amazon, and really just give yourself the tools. So keep your pantry nice and topped up. And along those lines, buy in bulk. So if you've ever been to a Whole Foods or some other natural foods markets, these type of bulk bins are probably pretty familiar to you, but you can save quite a bit on a lot of the dry pantry ingredients that you might use fairly often. So it's always, I think, kind of worthwhile to go and take a look. And again, proper storage is important. So if you buy a whole bunch of, say, I don't know, walnuts, we know walnuts spoil actually pretty fast. Make sure you properly store those, so refrigerate them, or again, invest in something like a vacuum sealer so that you can actually keep that stuff fresh and it's not going to go bad or spoil on you. If you do live a little bit further out from, real life and you're out in the country, and I envy you because I want to do that someday, but if you're away from the city and it's a bit more of a trek for you to get into town, you're probably really familiar with this. But there's all sorts of good deals and good prices on getting those essential items that you might need. And one of my favorites is learn to DIY. Learn to do some of these things yourself. If you can make some of those basic staples from scratch, you're going to save yourself time and money in the long run. And I know you might think, well, how am I going to save myself time? Well, if you happen to run out of ghee, for example, you won't have to go online and put in your order and wait for somebody to deliver it to you. You can just reach in your fridge, get some Kerrygold butter, set the pan on low or put it in your slow cooker, and you have it within 2 hours. So some of the things that I like to make from scratch, and you can find tutorials to do all this stuff online on websites like The Clothes Make the Girl and Stupid Easy Paleo and all kinds of other amazing paleo websites and stuff like that. But you can find directions and tutorials and videos if you're a very visual person for bone broth, ghee, how to make your own dressings and homemade mayonnaise. I mean, there are so many ways, different types of nut butter. You can find easy to follow steps, these tutorials to take you through, and have these basics on hand at all times. And they're they're so much less expensive when you make them on your own. Sometimes the hardest part is just getting started. Another good example is learning to ferment your own vegetables. So you can learn how to make kimchi, sauerkraut, all these other probiotic-rich veggies that are awesome to have with your breakfast or along with other meals. And then if you feel like getting really adventurous, things like kombucha. It's actually really, really, really inexpensive to make your own, but it can be a little daunting. So if you take some time and kind of learn how to keep these staples on hand, you're giving yourself more options in the long run. And then you can take all this money you saved and like go to Tahiti or something, which is pretty awesome. So what I'm going to do now is transition back to Mel, and we're going to start talking about some of the things that are not food related to keep all of this fun and easy for you.
Thank you. Before we switch off the slide, can we just get like a hell yeah for homemade mayo? Right? that was my favorite thing when I realized you could make mayo and it would taste like about 1 billion times better than the kind in the store. Okay, so we covered all the food stuff. I feel like this one is preaching to the choir since you guys are here and are clearly part of the tribe. But I think one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself is to surround yourself with other people who are doing the same thing. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be in your actual physical space. Not all of us live with partners or children or families who want to eat paleo. And I kind of live in rural Vermont, and the people at my gym, they're open to the idea, but they still think I'm a little crazy. So there are ways you can find your people online. And I'm sure many of you have done that because you're here. The one word of caution I have about the online community, which I think is tremendous. I mean, I wouldn't have half the friends I have right now if it weren't for the online paleo community. But the one thing I think we have to be really careful with, and if you know you're susceptible to this, pay attention to it, is comparison. Facebook and Instagram and Twitter can give us kind of like food envy and food shame. So if you know that you're vulnerable to that, be really careful about who you follow online. Anybody that you follow, that you have conversations with online, should make you feel good about yourself, never diminished. So just kind of keep that in mind as you are on forums like Mark's Daily Apple, which is great, Rob Wolf, The Whole 30, Reddit, like these are all amazing. And make sure that anybody you interact with makes you feel good about yourself. If you are living in a house where not everyone is paleo, I have one handy tip for you, which I think can really help make the whole thing a little bit easier. Designate a zone in the refrigerator and zones in cabinets that are paleo only. And make sure that any cabinet or refrigerator shelf that belongs to you as the paleo person is at your eye level. So that when you open the refrigerator door and you look in there, you just see your food. And when you open a cabinet, you just see your food. And everything else is like behind the blinders. That's one really practical way to kind of make a physical division that will mentally make it a lot easier. How many people in here live with people who don't follow paleo? Anybody? Oh, that's a pretty good number. Have you ever tried that trick? Does it work? That would be terrible if you were like, no, that doesn't work at all. Not at all. Okay, prioritizing sleep. This is my cat Smudge. And one of the things, besides the fact that she's really, really cute, that I want you to notice, is that she's completely relaxed into her sleep, and she fell asleep right in the middle of working. My point with this is that I was one of those people my whole life that was like, I only need 5 hours of sleep. I'm great. There is nothing wrong with me. 6? Never. 5 is plenty. And then I was working with Melissa Hartwig in about 2008, 2009. And she was like, hey, listen, I know you think you only need 5 hours of sleep, but how about this research that shows you can't lose body fat if you don't get 7 or 8 hours of sleep? And I was like, man, I can't wait to go to bed. So it took that to get me to really pay attention to how much sleep I need. It was really difficult to make the transition to making sleep a priority. Even when I was a little kid, I never wanted to go to bed because I was afraid I was going to miss something. And I would be like falling asleep and like prying my eyes open because I didn't want to miss out on anything. But you miss out on a lot if you don't get enough sleep because you walk through your life hungry and tired and emotionally kind of So I think it's really important to make sleep a priority. And for me, it was really important not to judge myself when I was tired. It's not shameful to be tired. It's completely natural to be tired. And if you're tired, you need to rest. So once I decided it was important to me, I had to figure out how to do it. Because part of the reason I only slept 5 hours a night is because I was a terrible sleeper. So I actually have quite a long list of things that you can do to make your sleep a little bit better. For me, I do all of them. For you, you might not need to do all of them, but I'm going to run through them fairly quickly, and it's probably nothing new, but I wanted to hit them all because they all have value, and if you really are not a good sleeper, you might need to do them all. One is to stop with any electronics for at least an hour before bed. It's bad, bad stuff. I mean, I love my computer and my iPhone, but an hour before bed, it's off. TV too. 2, you might need to wear some amber goggles. Like as soon as it starts to get dark outside, put your goggles on because that will help with the artificial light. 3, magnesium. I have to supplement a ton of magnesium because I'm a pretty stressed out person. I'm working on it, but it takes a while. You burn through magnesium really fast if you're stressed, so you might need a magnesium supplement. You could do something like a Natural Calm, or you can do Pure Pharma magnesium before bed. An Epsom salt bath is amazing because you absorb it through your skin and it's very relaxing. Also, then you also get some quiet time because generally people don't bug you when you're in the tub. Meditation is really lovely before bed. You can get into a nice guided meditation, so you don't even have to be really disciplined the way you do when you sit and stare at a wall. You just listen to a recording and it gently eases you into a meditative state, and then you go right into sleep. For me, it's really important to sleep in a cold room. Generally, the advice is probably between 60 and 68 degrees. I like it at about 65, which is pretty chilly and really awesome. I also sleep with an eye mask on, and the kind I have has a little indentation for my nose, so it fits really comfortably against my face. You can get it on Amazon. It's really lightweight and super comfortable. Blackout curtains are amazing. When we lived here in Austin, I was too cheap to buy blackout curtains, so I just put tinfoil over my windows. It made us look like we were crazy, but it did the same thing. It blocked out all of the sun. And finally, earplugs, because I'm very sensitive to noise. My husband teases me that I have really, really thin eyelids and super strong hearing because everything wakes me up. So I do all of those things. You might not need to, but they're all pretty awesome. This is a biggie. Paleo is a framework, and there is no such thing as perfect paleo. I would also add that the paleo police are a myth, and no one is policing what you eat or judging you. Except you, maybe. And that kind of goes back to the comparison thing. So, I mean, the biggest takeaway from this slide for me is you're just trying to find the version of paleo that works the best for you. And if that is more primal, that's great. If it's really strict Whole30, because that's what makes you feel the best, that's wonderful too. The most important thing is to find out the version that works for you. And the easiest way to do that is to start with the most basic, cleanest version. So that means probably equal proportions of protein, vegetables, and fat. And you do that for a month or 2 and you see how you feel. And to see how you feel, you might have to keep some notes. So you might want to keep a little journal. How did I sleep? What does my skin look like? How's my energy level? What's my mood? I noticed that if I eat gluten, 2 days later, I'm laying on the couch thinking that I'm worthless and that I will never amount to anything and no one loves me. Just if I eat a piece of bread. But it took a while to figure that out. So keep notes about how you're feeling. And then when you're ready to change something, you need to change one thing at a time. And only one thing. So if you think about that, that means this process could take a while. But you want to live a long life. So give it the time it needs, be patient, change one variable at a time, and see how you feel. And then move on to the next thing. And in that way, you will find the perfect paleo for you, because the perfect paleo objectively does not exist. Only what works for you is what really matters. And this is somewhat related. Know your goal and stick to it, and then forget about it for a while. And what I mean by that is, I think that a lot of us when we start paleo are super goal-oriented. You want to improve your sports performance, or you want to lose some weight, or you need to correct a health problem. And all of these are really valuable, important goals. And I think it's worth having a goal because it gives you something to strive for. But the thing about a goal that's really important is not that thing, It's the plan that's going to get you there. So your next step after you decide what you want to do is make a plan. It's not enough to say, I want that thing. You have to figure out how you're going to get there. And there are tons of resources here to help you do that. When you have your plan, forget about your goal for a little while. Because if you hound on that thing every day, did I lose weight yet? Did I lose weight yet? Did I lose weight yet? Am I healed yet? It's just, that's a path to heartbreak. These things aren't going to happen quickly necessarily. So I think it's important to lay out that plan and then move on with your life. And then come back and revisit your goal and see how you're doing. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Steph.
Tag out. Okay.
Thank you.
So one of the biggest things that we hear about is how do we make the time to do all of this? And if you're on Facebook complaining that you don't have enough time to do all of this, I know I'm guilty of this too. But in all seriousness, it's all about priority, right? Rome wasn't built in a day. We have to make the time, even if it's just to do little things every day. And we can all do it. We're all very busy, but we have to prioritize our health first, because if we don't have our health and our health is not there, then we're going to be struggling to just even keep that whole cycle of like eating healthy and staying on the wagon and stuff going. Think about, again, this is all tying together, but keeping things simple. Don't attempt to make a 5-course dinner on Wednesday night after CrossFit, but before you put your kids to bed, and then feel like you can't get it done and you're the worst parent ever, or you're just not living up to anybody's expectations. So be reasonable, plan around your schedule, but also think about things or things in your life that you can do to kind of shift time around. It's not that you have more or less time than anybody else, it's just shifting it and pushing it in certain directions that'll help get you there. I really like this one. It's to choose who you follow. You can't follow everybody. And I know there's so many, like Mel and I have been in the community for quite a long time. There's so many more sites and books and amazing resources than there ever have been. And it's wonderful, but you'll get very overwhelmed if you try to follow everybody and follow everybody's Instagram and find the best books by buying all of them. So I like to think of this saying, and I read about this on a psychology website, but it was about the psychology of marketing, and it's geared toward bloggers, and it said something like, you can't be for everyone. Who are you for? Okay, so reverse it. When you're looking for a resource, somebody who you know you can trust, who is for you? Who is aligned to the type of life that you think you can eventually get to, or the things that really resonate with you? So if you're not an athlete, maybe following somebody who works with athletes isn't perhaps the best. If you have kids and you're trying to fit paleo into your lifestyle with your family, follow somebody or look for somebody who does that really well. So those things are going to help you align to your goals, which Mel talked about, and it's going to be less overwhelming. We're in such an age of information overwhelm that paring down and finding that beautiful red apple that's going to be for you is going to help you out. Be ruthless with your peace of mind. So this kind of goes with that as well, but not every new tip or amazing new program or shred of research that comes out is applicable to you. You don't have to take it all in and assimilate it all. So simplify and figure out what's going to help move you toward your goals. If you want to run a 5K, look for things that are going to help you figure out your nutrition and your performance. If you're trying to deal with and improve your health, you're dealing with something with autoimmunity, then look for something that aligns to that. But don't worry about having to incorporate all the new information that comes out all the time. Look for people you can trust that are going to help bridge the gap between all of that research and then the practical, what you need to do. And remember, it's just food. Can I get an amen?
Yay, food!
Yeah. I say this quite a bit, but the whole point is to have a life that you love and you enjoy. Sometimes it's not worth...
say that again. That's so it. Say it again.
The whole point is to have a life that you love and enjoy, right? We get really narrow sometimes in our focus about moving towards certain goals and working on this aspect of our health or that aspect of our health. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're not able to participate in the life that's around you and enjoy this progress and this change that you're implementing in your own life, what is it for? And certainly food is an important part of that, and it's really about making those choices and change over a long period of time. And sometimes you're at the bridal shower and you're gonna have the cake, right? It's like, this is what you do. Or you're celebrating, somebody's birthday and you're gonna have cake. Like, it's okay. Those are the moments, and we have such a social tie to food. It's all right if you make a less than ideal choice on that day. You're gonna have to live with the consequences, good or bad, but remember to participate in this life that you're crafting for yourself. And I think that's kind of our takeaway message is to build this life that you love and have food be a part of it, not living your life to make food the most important thing.
Right on.
And with that, we are going to open up the floor to questions.
Thank you. Really? Come on. There we go. There's one.
Okay. Well, first of all, I love you both.
Thank you.
I use your cookbooks or the stuff in them every single day almost. So thank you for that. So my question is, for example, say you don't live somewhere that populated, so kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Maybe you come to Austin for a weekend. So, you want to eat all the things because Austin's such an awesome place. Any tips for, maybe how to incorporate paleo and, staying on the wagon while traveling? And I know there's been a lot of talk on that, but your guys' thoughts would be appreciated.
Yeah, I would be remiss to say you're only going to take one trip to Austin in your entire life, and then you're going to come here and eat like cans of tuna fish and carrot sticks the whole time you're here. It's really important to know your own personal context and what foods you can tolerate and what foods you can't. As Mel mentioned earlier, we're huge advocates of the Whole 30 for really figuring out what foods do and don't work for you, and then you can work around that. A lot of restaurants are really, really keyed into folks with food allergies and food sensitivities, and if you communicate that with your server, you make some swaps. Maybe you're like, hey, I know that fries aren't going to be a good choice, but look at this amazing salad made with local greens. Kind of figure out where you have leeway there, where you can still enjoy coming here and having the full experience. I mean, Mel and I have both done some traveling. When I went to Paris, I ate part of a baguette sitting on the steps of the Palace of Versailles, and it was amazing. And I knew that I would have to live with the consequences that it brought me, and I didn't feel that great, but I was like, hey, when in France, you do that sort of stuff. But it's all about knowing, I think, what works for you the best and what's definitely an off limits. If you're obviously dealing with something like celiac or you're doing AIP or a really strict protocol, you've got to know where the boundaries are.
Yeah, the thing I would add to that is when you decide to go outside of your normal guidelines, really make sure the thing you're eating is the best version of that thing. A baguette in Paris, 100% yes. A baguette on an airplane, really not so much. So really strive for that thing that is like the platonic ideal of that thing. And then the other piece is enjoy every bite of it. If you're going to regret it while you're eating it, there's no point in doing it. So I would, smell it, relish it, enjoy the texture, talk about it, take a picture of it. And then when you're done, just get back to your normal routine. Ooh, there's one. Oh, she's running.
It is a paleo event. I had to make sure she worked out too. Okay, so both of you talked about the importance of stress management, which is amazing. What is the number one thing each one of you do? Maybe a 5-minute stress management tip that you can give to people here.
Okay. I have a really good one that I love that I learned in Kundalini. You can do it anywhere, and you can do it and no one will even know that you're doing it, which is to inhale really deeply into your stomach for a count of 4. Hold it for a count of 4, slowly exhale for a count of 4, and suspend your breath out for 4. And even if you do that like 5 times in a row, you instantly feel better. If you can do it for 5 or 10 minutes, even better. You could do it right now. It feels so good. Because what happens is you fill your belly, and then it's really relaxing when you exhale, and that pushes lots of oxygen through your system. So you instantly get an energy boost and feel calm at the same time.
I go outside. I work at my house with my cat. Most of the time I'm by myself and I'm on the computer. And even though I live in San Diego, don't hate me too much, it's always sunny there. I feel like getting outside, getting away from the computer, putting the phone down, like just unplugging literally and figuratively, and just going outside to enjoy the fresh air and look around and be observant and just be in that moment. I mean, you can do that in 5 minutes. It's awesome. So you should all go outside after this.
And breathe.
Close to your chin.
Thank you. Hi there. Any suggestions for moms out there with school-age kids who are trying to do this diet to not make their children feel like they can't eat what their friends are eating, how to deal with it in school, how to make it fun for them? I don't know if that's your area that you can comment on or not.
I don't have children, but I am a huge fan and friends with Michelle Tam of Nom Nom Paleo, and I've heard her answer this question, so I'm going to steal her answer. Her answer, I believe, and if she's here, she can correct me or get me later on Twitter, is that at home, they really try to have their children eat the same things they do and explain to them why they're doing that, and make it more like a positive choice that they're all making as opposed to rules they're following and things they're taking out because those things are bad. So not necessarily saying, yes, no list the way I do, but more this is what we eat and why, and then kind of giving the kids a little bit of leeway when they're not at home to participate with their friends if they want to. I know Michelle has said like most of the time her kids just don't even bother with the junky food, and once in a while they do. And it kind of all comes out in the wash. I think the answer is probably different if your child has a health reason for eating paleo, but then that's a really different conversation because then you're talking with them about their health and why they have to do that a little bit more seriously. But if you guys have kids, Michelle Tam has really great information at nomnompaleo.com about how she kind of got her kids on board and how they eat now. And Everyday Paleo too has good stuff. Anybody else? No more questions? I have a question for Steph.
Uh-oh.
What are your 3 go-to meals that you always make? You told us we should all pick 3. What are your 3?
Yeah, Nom Nom Paleo's slow cooker Kahlua pork.
Yes, that's a good one. Yep.
Right? Scotch eggs, where I actually learned about Scotch eggs from Mel's book. And so Scotch eggs, definitely. And I just like to have a bunch of sweet potatoes that I like. It sounds so boring, but roast a bunch of sweet potatoes, and I always have that on hand, and that can go into anything. Like I put it in post-workout drink. I can chop it up and use it as breakfast hash. Like there's so many different options. So the more basic, I think, the better, because it can be transformed into so many different things.
Agreed. Any other questions for us?
I have one last question. Steph, did you know that you won an award last night?
I did not.
You missed for best Instagram, Stupid Easy
yay.
Paleo.
Thank you so
I wanted
much.
to,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought this was a perfect time to let you know. Anyway.
Yeah, so follow me on Instagram. Here's the perfect opportunity to talk about that. So you can find Mel and I pretty much anywhere online, and we would be happy. I know I'm speaking for her here, but
Please do.
I know her, and I know the type of person she is. We're always happy to answer your questions, and if you walk out of here and you're like, oh, I wanted to ask this, please don't be shy, and come find us, and we'll help you out the best we can.
Thank you so much for
Thanks.
coming. Yay to you guys.
And I'm going to stand off here for just like 2 minutes if anybody can think of anything, and then I'm going to go upstairs for another panel.
Bye.